excited to be here. I've talked a few years in a row now on the GAPS protocol, which has really had a lot to do with gut and psychology syndrome. But and Denis was alluding to this, there's a new book, and Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride, I know it's a little bit of a mouthful there, she is the author of these books, and she really has opened up not just the alternative health spectrum, but also the medical world to the connection between the gut and the brain. And I was very, very lucky to be able to work with her. I went and did a week-long course with her in Chicago, which was really life-changing after I graduated from the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition and the Institute of Integrative Nutrition in New York. So it has been a long, fun road, and I am through and through a GAPS and gut girl, and I absolutely believe that a lot of illness, a lot of our discomfort, a lot of things that go wrong in the body, really, it all starts in the gut. So what I'm hoping to cover today is a little education on what GAPS is, what the protocol is all about, who is it meant for, and how do we implement that into our lives. I will cover a basic overview of each of the stages of the GAP protocol, and I really want to break it down and make it easy for people to understand. It can be very overwhelming when you read this book to go, oh my gosh, this is a lot. How do I start this? What do I do? Where can you go for more information? And most importantly, because let's be honest here, this is the Fermentation Festival. How do ferments work into this, and why are they so important? And where do we start, and how do we get them? And I think a lot of you already know the Light Cellar is the place to go, especially if you don't have room in your house to make your own ferments. We need to go to the Light Cellar, and we need to try all the goodies that they have there, because they have so many gut goodies that we're going to talk about here tonight. So let's get started. What is GAPS? GAPS was first described in 2004 in the first book that is on Malcolm's screen there, the GAPS Gut and Psychology Syndrome book. It's the yellow book. And since then, it's become well known all around the world. It's helped children, it's helped adults, and it really was all about this newfound idea of connecting the brain with the gut and how that is going to affect our mental wellness. And during the years since 2004, this diet has been evolving. There's been changes. It has been used in people with very simple issues all the way to very complex patients for Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. And the full spectrum of what GAPS really meant has emerged. The second GAPS book, which I'm really excited to add on to everything we've learned in the last couple of years in the Ferment Festivals about the GAPS diet, is the Gut and Physiology Syndrome book. And it's the blue book that's new. And it just came out late in 2020. And last year during the Fermentation Festival, I was really excited. I thought it was going to be out before the Fermentation Festival last year, but we didn't quite get to it. So the full spectrum of the GAPS diet is basic. We start with a GAPS introduction diet. We move into the full GAPS diet. And then there's some different evolutions that's come out of this. And the first one is the absolute no plant GAPS diet, the ketogenic GAPS diet, and the more plant GAPS diet. And we're going to talk about all of those. So it's kind of evolved, and it's become, has options for everybody's guts. We all are different. We're all biochemically unique. We need to be able to listen to our body and really feel what's best for our body. So it really helps us bring this all into perspective. So I always like to start with Hippocrates, because Hippocrates knew where it was at. It all began in the gut. We knew this. We knew this years and bazillion years ago. So why are we not following it? So we know that when our gut is out of balance, there's inflammation and there's microbiome issues in the gut. And we'll talk a lot more about the microbiome in a second. It's going to influence our entire body. It's going to start influencing our neurotransmitters. It's going to start influencing how we react to stress, how our mood is, how we behave. All of those things start when the gut goes off. That is a connection to the brain. More neurotransmitters are made in your gut than in your brain. So it makes perfect sense that we need to start supporting our gut to support our brain. Well, when the brain is out of balance, that's going to affect our motility. So how fast or slow things are moving through our body, how things are secreted into the gut. So I don't know if you guys know this, but we have gastric juices in our stomach. We have enzymes that are released in our small intestine by our pancreas. All of that is going to be influenced by our brain. Finally, we have our nutrient delivery throughout our body. So our nutrients, our food, we can't just, throw some food on our skin and it's absorbed in our body, right? There's a special process that takes place going through our digestive tract that breaks down all the food into very tiny little microparticles that we absorb into our body. So think of yourselves as a donut. This is the outside of your body out here. This tube going down the middle of you is also the outside of your body. Only what is absorbed in through that tube goes into your body to feed you. So imagine there's an uninhibited, inflamed environment down there. Well, the nutrients are not going to be able to get into your body to feed your brain and your organs and your energy levels and things like that. And that microbial balance. So we actually, in this tube, this dark, moist, beautiful place down there, we have a bunch of microbes, both good, bad, indifferent. They're all in there. There's a whole ecosystem, and there's actually more bacterial, microbial DNA and cells in your gut than you have cells in your entire body. So basically, you're more bacteria than you are human. So we need to support that microbial balance so that all those nutrients can get into our body, the inflammation goes down in our gut, and we can live a very fulfilled life. We have energy, we have vitality, and we feel good all the time. Okay? Everybody still with me? Good. Let's move on. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. What is the purpose of GAPS? So gut and psychology syndrome, or gut and physiology syndrome, when you're dealing with this, the entire body is affected. When we have an abnormal gut microbe, this allows toxins to be distributed through the body. So pathogens or bad gut bugs, they produce toxins in the body and they inflame the gut, and the gut becomes what we call leaky, and things can leak into the body that aren't supposed to be there. We need these good gut bugs that help break down toxins and fibers and make sure that the gut lining is nice and taken care of. So when the brain is affected, then gut and psychology syndrome is what we call it. But when the rest of the body is affected, then we refer to it as gut and physiology syndrome. But as you can see with these two circles here in this slide, they overlap. A lot of times there's going to be symptoms with neurological stuff and brain stuff, as well as physiological stuff. So the syndromes always overlap, and you'll always see symptoms in both areas. Now, GAPS can develop right from birth. Okay, we can be we can start on the wrong foot here, and this is how, when you're born, as you come through your mother, you are inoculated with your first bacteria. Your first microbiome goes into your body. So if you don't pass through your mother, but you're taken out of your mother via C-section, you can already be starting your life at a disadvantage. So we pick up our microbiome as we go through the vaginal canal. But if you're born by C-section and you don't have a chance to go through your mother, then you pick up a lot of your microbiome from the foods you eat and from skin-to-skin contact. So it takes a while if you catch up at all. And many things can damage our microbiome as we are developing. So there's chemicals in our environment. Some of us have had to take multiple amounts of antibiotics in our lives. And we have toxins in our food, our air, our water now. All of that is going to affect our microbiome. And once the microbiome is more bad gut bugs than good gut bugs, then that's when the individual really starts to experience symptoms and even can become chronically ill. Okay, so the GAPS diet, it originated because of digestive issues that were associated with mental wellness, and it's developed even more to bring in this physiology over time. Okay, so you have, why the GAPS diet is really important is that it has influences on our brain, and it has influence on our behaviors and our mood and how we handle stress in our lives. And this becomes a vicious cycle of when the gut is out of balance, the brain becomes out of balance. Okay, so we have to think about the protocol here with GAPS, and it really involves diet. So the nutrition we're putting into our body is number one. And then, of course, bringing down the inflammation in the digestive tract and sealing off that leaky gut. We can use, there are some supplements that we're going to talk about. And we really want to bring in aspects of detoxification and some lifestyle changes to bring down the toxins that we are exposed to on a daily basis. So who can benefit from GAPS? So really, this is for chronic degenerative conditions, both physical and mental. It can include things like autoimmune issues, asthma, eczema, allergies, food sensitivities, fatigue, arthritis, chronic infections, neurological and endocrine issues, digestive issues, people who are dealing with focus and learning disabilities, mental illnesses. I've seen it used for people with epilepsies, eating disorders, and there's so much more that I've seen the GAPS diet used to help with. These issues are all serious, and many of the individuals that I work with have been dealing with gut issues and some of these conditions chronically for years. So let's look at what a typical child scenario looks like. So typical children I work with have developed GAPS from their mothers, really. And most times it comes to light when that mom actually has several gut issues and it has typical GAPS symptoms as well. So mother passes on the gut dysbiosis to baby, or baby is born via C-section. This compromises the immune system. Your microbiome is in constant contact with your immune system. It's telling your immune system pathogens might be coming in, get on high alert. It's helping to maintain the barrier, that gut lining. So when the microbiome is compromised, then the gut lining is compromised, and the immune system will attack anything that leaks into your gut, into your body from your gut. Antibiotics. There have been kids I've worked with that are on antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic, and it just really damages that microbiome. So it becomes this vicious circle of the immune system being compromised, getting sick all the time, having to take antibiotics, and we have to get some soothing nutrition into the body to help support that immune system so that we can, also seal off that gut. And so a lot of people, especially children, will start to develop autoimmune. And this is the beginning of a vicious cycle, because a lot of people with autoimmune don't just have one autoimmune issue. So if we can catch children quickly and really help them with their gut and their microbiome and sealing off that leaky gut, we can hopefully help them not develop more autoimmune as the years go on. Now, a typical adult scenario, they have either been dealing with gut flora from birth or have gone through periods of a lot of antibiotics or medication. So I have actually had a lot of clients who went down to Mexico or Guatemala or something and ended up getting very sick and took a bunch of medications down there, didn't even know what they were, and came back and have suffered with gut issues for a long, long time. Or for other reasons, they've had to be on long-term medications that have affected their microbiome, and then the gut issues start. But sometimes they realize that they've been dealing with gut issues from a very young age, if not from birth. So they chronic low energy, digestive issues, food sensitivities, asthma, skin issues, autoimmunity. But then it goes even further with adults, where we start to see premenstrual symptoms, infertility, low sex drive. So a hormonal component to this as well. A lot of people, you know, I deal with are young people that feel like they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like achy and hurty, and I need to stretch out and get moving for like half an hour before I feel good. And then there's the mental wellness components that work into this as well. So the depression, anxious feelings, and mental health, we really want to help people with that. And this is one protocol way of eating that can really support that for people. So I want to introduce you to your gut. So a lot of people think that the tube that goes from their mouth all the way through their body is this nice plasticky like tube that's smooth and clean and can be just washed away. But in reality, it's more like a carpet, okay? It's lined with carpet and mucus and things like that. So we need to have good microbiome, sometimes it's called gut flora, in our gut, because our microbiome actually maintains and takes care of this gut wall. So you can see we have these finger-like projections that come out, and that increases the surface area of our small intestine so we can actually absorb more nutrients. But what happens is these little villi, these little finger-like projections, sorry, my mouth and my brain are not connecting right this second, they actually get worn out and they get damaged, and there's a lot of mucus that will line this lining of your gut to help protect it. But when there's pathogens in your gut, that mucosal layer can actually deteriorate as well, exposing these beautiful enterocytes, which are the cells that line the villi. And once the enterocytes start to get damaged, that's when we are going to see real damage happening. So we've been talking about the microbiome, or more specifically, good gut bugs, bad gut bugs. But we want to make sure that there's a good balance happening. You're never going to get rid of the bad gut bugs. They're there. They're always going to be there. But if you have enough of the good gut bugs, they will take care and keep the bad gut bugs in check, right? So that they don't affect our health in a bad way. These good gut bugs, they're helping us to maintain these enterocytes. Now, I really want to introduce you to these enterocytes because they're cute little fellers, okay? Now, the guy on the left here, he's a healthy enterocyte. As you can see, he's nice and plump. He's got a big smile on his face. He's got lots of healthy hair. And on each one of those little hairs, it's lined with digestive enzymes. So those digestive enzymes help break down the nutrients in our body. But you can see the guy on the right, he's not happy. He's not plump. He looks more like a raisin. His hair's falling out. There's not a lot of digestive enzymes there. So he's not being well taken care of and well maintained, okay? And our gut bugs do this. Now you can imagine the nice plump cells sitting up against each other. There's not a lot that can squeeze between those nice plump cells, right? They're held together by what's called tight junctions. But that poor sick enterocyte on the right-hand side there, he's like a little raisin. And when he's up against his friends that also look raisiny, they're not stuck together really well. And those tight junctions, they loosen up. And that's when things can start leaking in. You can see here, things can start leaking in between these cells that aren't supposed to get into the body, and they activate our immune system. And that's when leaky gut starts. And eventually leaky gut, if it's around long enough, can contribute to the development of autoimmune issues, okay? So this can explain the epidemic of food allergies and intolerances, because as our immune system attacks these foods that are leaking into us, then it has a memory. And all of a sudden, next time we go to eat that food, our body's going to react. Okay. So sometimes we can have these reactions right away, and that's a real allergy, or it can take days for these food sensitivities to manifest. And we really don't even know by the time 3 or 4 days have gone by what we ate 3 or 4 days ago that can be contributing to the ways we feel right now in this moment. Okay, so food intolerance can manifest in any type of symptoms, from headaches to achiness, insomnia, low energy, cystitis, which is like issues with your bladder and your kidneys. So the best support we can give is to focus on rebuilding the microbiome and soothing these enterocytes in the gut lining. And we do that using the GAPS protocol. Okay, so there's different parts of this GAPS protocol I want to quickly run through today. So the first part is the GAPS introduction diet. And it's not necessary to always start with this introduction diet, but if you have the time and you're willing to put in a little extra effort, it's definitely worth it to follow the introduction diet at some point. Now, if you want to just jump in right away, you can jump into the full GAPS diet, and you don't have to always go through the introduction diet. And then we want to talk about coming off of the GAPS protocol. Is it always necessary, or is it something that you can stay on for a long term? So let's talk about this a little bit more. So the introduction diet is designed to soothe and seal the gut lining as quickly as possible. So if you're dealing with a lot of food sensitivities, this is really where you want to start. It achieves this by providing 3 factors. First, we're trying to get as much nourishing substances, large amounts of nourishing substances, to help that gut lining be soothed and get the inflammation to come down. So we're adding amino acids, gelatin, glucosamine, collagen, fats, vitamins, minerals, all of those nutrients in. All of these substances are going to feed those enterocytes and help them calm down and regenerate. So your gut wall renews itself, and we're always shedding off those enterocytes and building new ones. So we want to make sure that we're building good quality, healthy enterocytes. In order to produce healthy cells, your gut lining needs special nourishment, which the GAPS protocol will provide. So as a result, you will build a new healthy gut wall for yourself made out of the best quality materials. So the second thing is that many GAPS individuals, people who try this protocol, have inflammation of their gut lining, and they may not even be aware of it. So it doesn't always manifest as gut issues. So the gut lining may be sore and sensitive. So the GAPS introduction diet is very, very gentle, and it removes a lot of fiber up front, which our body can't actually digest. We need a very strong microbiome to be able to digest all that fiber. So as we soothe that gut lining and we take out the fiber, then we can build that microbiome as well. So that the fiber for some people may actually irritate or damage the gut lining more and interfere with the soothing process. So we want to cut back on the fiber, which is not something I say to like common clients of mine. I'm always trying to get people to increase their fiber, but when your gut is inflamed, it may not be your best choice. And then we want to regenerate all those cells and in the gut, and that is ruled and orchestrated by those good gut bugs, okay, which normally live on the surface of the gut. And without their presence, there can be no recovery. So we need to bring in those good gut bugs. And we do that by adding fermented foods in very strategic ways. So the introduction diet provides them probiotic microbes in the food form right from the start. So the very name introduction diet implies that we begin with this part of the protocol. It's helpful for most GAP people to go through the introduction diet at some stage because it gives the best chance to optimize that microbiome for the rest of the body. However, like I said in the beginning, not everybody has to start from the introduction diet. It can be very demanding and it can be a little bit difficult to follow. And if you're a really busy individual with a very high stress lifestyle and lots to go on in your career, so you may have the circumstances where starting from the full GAPS diet is a better idea, okay? Also, if you're not a great cook and your kitchen isn't set up, I get it. It's not always, your forte. It's not my forte either. I have a husband that does all the cooking because of that. You may need to collect a lot of ingredients that are not common for you. So you can start with the full GAPS diet and then work your way back and try an introduction at another point, okay? So there are 6 GAPS stages once you get through the introduction. Okay, so let's run through them very briefly. So on stage 1, we are really working here with meat, bone, and fish stock. And so I really recommend that you start with meat stocks, not bone broths, because if you have any buildup of histamine in the body, the bone broth is very high in histamine. It's cooked for very long periods of time. So having the meat and fish stocks is a better choice. It's cooked for a much shorter portion of time. And then we can make soups with the meat stock and add some vegetables. We also want to make sure that we're getting probiotic foods right from the start. Dairy, whey, yogurt, sour cream, and vegetable-based ferments as well, like sauerkraut juice is really, really important. We need to start very small here, very small, or else you can have some die-off reactions happen and it really can be hard on the body. So I really recommend that people just start with like a teaspoon of sauerkraut juice to begin and integrate some more fermented foods as we go along. Now, in the introduction part of this protocol, there is a dairy introduction. So if you think you may have some sensitivities with dairy, there is a way in the GAPS protocol that you can introduce dairy to test that out for yourself, okay? So yogurt is milder than kefir if you're going to bring in the dairy, and it will produce a more mild die-off reaction, if any. So if you want, I would recommend starting with yogurt rather than kefir and having kefir for later. Now, whey has no casein in it, so it's also a great start with dairy if you're worried about a casein reaction with dairy. You can use kefir grains to make your own kefir, and there's water kefir as well, which I believe there's a talk later this week about water kefir, so that's something we want to keep on our minds, so that we go to that one as well. But you must introduce after yogurt, and like you want to start with yogurt and then introduce the kefir stuff afterwards. And again, you're starting with just a teaspoon. You want to go very, very slowly and increase it over time. Listen to your body and really listen to know what's going on. You can use kefir to ferment cream and make sour cream at home. So there's other options there. Other good things to add is some herbs like ginger, mint, chamomile, and you can sweeten those a little bit with raw honey. Raw honey is very easily digested by the gut, and so that is our sweetener of choice in the GAPS protocol. Now, if you have extreme cases of diarrhea, I know this is a lot to take in, we want to cut out vegetables. This is where we would want to go with the no plant option right off the bat. Meat and fish stocks, whey, yogurt, juice from sauerkraut, and believe it or not, the GAPS protocol actually recommends raw egg as well. Some people, it takes a while to wrap their brain around that, but raw egg and raw egg yolks is really a part of this in protocol, and they recommend a GAPS shake using raw egg yolks. So again, what I recommend for a lot of people, this can be a lot. So take what works for you and what you're comfortable with, use that in your body to get your body where you need it to be. And remember that you need to go very slow, okay? So with all introduction of probiotic foods, there will be a die-off. So you must go slowly and you really want to push through and keep going and adding a little bit more and a little bit more. So when we go to stage 2, we just add on to what we've been doing in our previous stage. So we keep everything we were doing in stage 1, and we increase the amount of fermented foods every single day. And this is where we're going to add some raw egg yolks again. And then we're going to begin to add some soft boiled eggs, really soft boiled eggs. And then we add stews and casseroles with lots of meat and vegetables here, where the vegetables are cooked, so that we're adding in a little bit of fiber, but in a gentle way. And then you can actually add in some fermented fish. And they actually have, they recommend raw salmon. And so a little bit of sushi in there and some homemade ghee. So this is another dairy product, but we're taking out a lot of the dairy proteins, the milk proteins, and just using the ghee fat. And again, we're going to add on in stage 3. So we continue everything we're doing. And this may take weeks, it may take days. You're listening to your body and you're going with the flow here. If at any point something doesn't feel good, if symptoms are coming back, then you back up. You always back up and go back to the previous stage, stay there for a little while, and then continue on. This is my favorite stage because you get to add ripe avocado. I love avocado. It just makes me feel complete. It's like the perfect food. It's got fat and fiber. It's really great. And there's some great GAPS pancakes where you mix the nut butter, egg, and a little bit of squash, which are just divine. Scrambled eggs and omelets get added in here. And then you're still increasing lots of different sauerkrauts and fermented vegetables. And you're doing a little bit at a time, because not only are you adding probiotics, but you're increasing the fiber with these, okay? So you want to go slow and watch what happens, increase very slowly. And you want to make sure you're increasing your fat consumption, okay? And again, if any symptoms arise, then you go back a stage, you just hang out there, and then you move forward again. Stage 4, again, we're building off the last stages. This is great. We start to add roasted and grilled meats, cold pressed olive oil, freshly pressed juices. I highly recommend you get a mastication juicer for this, where it's all squished and not blended with a blade. And then this is where we do what's called a GAPS milkshake. So you use your raw egg yolk and your juices, your sour cream, coconut oil, and you make a milkshake out of it. And Dr. Natasha swears by these on a daily basis. And you can also add some homemade nut bread. There's a few GAPS recipes that I've included in a handout for you. And so if you want any extra recipes, I'd be happy to do that, to prepare a few more recipes if you need to, because the GAPS cookbook is ridiculously expensive on Amazon. So the recipes are phenomenal though. And then stage 5, we're adding apple puree and baked apples. So this is where we get to add in our first fruit and more raw vegetables. So this is where we've had fermented vegetables, we've had cooked vegetables, now we're moving into raw vegetables. And this stage is the big one. They have to be very cautious with this. And I find a lot of people go back and forth between stage 4 and 5 for a while, finding what works for them. And they may have a bit of fruit and vegetable juice before they actually move into the actual fruit. It helps remove a little bit of the fiber, but get the nutrients in. Now, a lot of people love beets, and but raw beets and beet juice and things like that, I recommend adding them fermented first. And the Light Cellar has amazing fermented beets, because that will help when you start adding them in juices and as a veggie raw, because they can be quite cleansing for the liver and they can cause symptoms. So having a little bit fermented ahead of time is really important. And the last stage, this is where we bring in some peeled fruits, Raw, we get to have honey, a little bit more honey, some baked cakes and other sweet things are allowed. Dried fruit can be used as a sweetener. And again, this is the transition into the full protocol, from the introduction into the full protocol. So I find a lot of people kind of sit at these last stages and kind of 4, 5, 6 back and forth a little bit. If you've gone through the GAPS introduction protocol before, moving into the GAPS, full GAPS diet, then you'll just, like, you're very experienced in already how this works. And you just expand your diet according to the list of allowed and not allowed foods when you get into the full protocol. If you decided to start from the full GAPS protocol, then I really recommend that you have a good look through the GAPS introduction protocol before you do that, because it will give you some really good information about the most important elements of this nutritional protocol. So the meat stocks, the soups, the fermented foods, these foods need to be introduced on the full GAPS diet from the very beginning. So it's important to balance your meals according to your body's needs. So Dr. Natasha says one man's meat is another man's poison. So every single one of us is unique individual with unique metabolisms, and we may feel great with chicken and turkey, but not so great with beef and bison or pork. And so we really have to feel that out. Some people may feel great with dairy, other people's not. Some people may feel good with certain vegetables, and then certain vegetables are not going to be part of their diet until they get that microbiome up and running and good and solid and feeling balanced, and the soothing of the gut lining. You're going to have to go back and forth with some foods. So many practitioners that I've talked to believe that the full GAPS diet needs to be followed for about 2 years, okay? Some people with milder conditions can start introducing some non-allowed foods in about a year and have little treats here and there. And other people find that they have to adhere to it much more strictly for many years. And even some people just choose, because of the trauma that they've had in the past, that they just are going to eat this way, and that's going to be it. Beet kvass is a very good option, Debbie, very good option, especially before you introduce the raw beets. It becomes a way of life for a lot of people, and they just feel their best when they eat this way. So I recommend that when your health problems are dissipating, that you wait about 6 months before you consider coming off the protocol. I never recommend just going back to the way you might have been eating before. Use what you've learned about your body, and somebody's annotating my slides. That's interesting. And a lot of people have never felt so good in their lives, so they want to keep that way of life. Okay. So oh, that was all about the full GAPS diet. I forgot to switch the slide there, sorry. So some other versions of the GAPS protocol that have come up. The first one is the no plants GAPS, where basically they cut out all plant foods. Sometimes the first stage in the GAPS introduction diet is actually not gentle enough. And so despite having a little bit of well-cooked vegetables, certain clients just don't feel good still. And so the logical step for Dr. Natasha was to remove all plant matter out of the diet. Not a leaf, not a speck of anything from the plant kingdom is allowed in the no plants. And this is a more controversial approach for sure. But after she's been working with clients and patients of hers for years and years, she's had a lot of success with this, and it's not a forever thing. It's a means to an end to help soothe that gut. The second one that's come up, and it's been very popular in recent years, is the ketogenic protocol. Well, ketones are water-soluble substances in the body that, when used fat for making energy. Okay, so we use these ketones from fat and use it for energy. And in a normal, healthy state, our body should be able to go from fat burning to glucose burning and back and forth. So every time your body burns its own fat for energy, ketones are produced and they can be used for energy. And some organs in our body actually prefer using ketones. So by changing our diet, we can deliberately switch the body from using fats as a source of energy instead of glucose. And this can be very productive for people with, treating cancers, epilepsy, Lyme disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, obesity, mental illness issues, and other health issues. So there is a way of doing the GAPS diet that is more ketogenic. And it actually, just the normal GAPS diet for a lot of people becomes a bit ketogenic as well. And then there's the more plants GAPS protocol, because we know that we're all unique, and people begin to know what feels good in their body, and they thrive on plants versus animals, and they have to find the right balance for their body. So we have to learn to listen to our bodies and give ourselves what we need. And this might change over time. Maybe sometimes by season, even like in the summer and spring, you may need more plant food. In the winter and fall, you may need more animal food. It's totally biochemically unique to you. And you just need to follow your gut, okay? Follow what your guts are telling you. Make sure you don't suffer from any diarrhea or constipation or abdominal issues. Just go with what your body's telling you is important for your health. Now, the More Plants GAPS diet is not vegetarian, and Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride does not really advocate vegetarian or vegan diets. She truly believes that we should have plant food or animal food in our diet, and that we are meat, and meat recognizes meat, and it's easier for our body to get nutrition from meat than it is plants, because some people just really can't digest those plant fibers and break down the plant food in order to get the nutrients out of the plants. So until the gut is really soothed and sealed, it may be important that you really bring in some animal foods for the time being. So some other important additions, supplements. Yes, there are supplements that we want to bring in. Again, we're biochemically individuals. So cod liver oil, Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride loves cod liver oil. If you can stomach the fermented cod liver oil, then I highly recommend you try it. If you are not ready to go down that path, if that's pushing the limits of what you're ready to do right now, fish oil, omega-3 fish oil. And I highly recommend that you find one that has a lot of EPA and DHA, because that's one step that your body doesn't have to do, is convert that oil, that fish oil, into the EPA and DHA that your body can use right away. This oil is extremely anti-inflammatory. It has a positive influence on your microbiome, and I highly recommend that you add a little extra omega-3s. Another one, probiotics. We want to bring probiotics. Yes, we're bringing lots of fermented foods into our diet, but a little extra help with some probiotic supplements can't hurt. And I never want to see anyone take the same probiotic pill supplement for the rest of their life. Mix it up. Try and get them from fermented food products. There's a great option called Living Alchemy. That is a Canadian-based company, and they ferment foods and get the probiotics right off of that. There's lots of different options for probiotics, and you want to get as many different strains from different sources in your body as possible. Digestive enzymes can be your best friend for helping to break down the food, especially if your digestive system isn't working optimally. So a full spectrum digestive enzyme is a great addition. Now, Dr. Natasha talks a lot about iodine. Never, never, never do I want anyone to take iodine orally. What she recommends you do is you take a little part of your skin, maybe the inside of your arm, and you paint some iodine on there, some liquid iodine, and you watch it absorb into your body. Like, it's fascinating. If you're low on iodine, your skin will absorb what you need. If that iodine is gone within 24 hours and you haven't washed it off, you know you needed that iodine, and you can put another little patch on. Your skin will only absorb what you need. The rest will just sit on your skin until it washes off. So it's a very safe way of getting a little extra iodine. We want to work on reducing the toxins we're exposed to. So supporting detoxification and your liver is really important. So that's what those beets do. So slowly increase the amount of beets and beet kvass and fermented beets that you're getting. Juicing can really help support that. And Dr. Natasha really loves sunbathing in a smart way though, okay? We want to make sure we're getting smart sunbathing in. We're increasing our vitamin D. I love when people can get out in the morning sun, especially because that sunlight will do all kinds of great things for your brain, stimulate melatonin for the next night so that you get a better sleep. And we all know that when we get better sleeps, we just work better overall. So these are some practical problems that people may be dealing with. If you're dealing with diarrhea, cleansing, it's a cleansing of the body, right? It's your body trying to get rid of the things that shouldn't be there, potentially pathogenic microbes. So you want to concentrate on high protein dairy. If you're dealing with constipation, however, you want to go with more high fat dairy or consider taking dairy out altogether, okay? And more animal fats and more water for constipation. Vegetarians, GAPS may not be a great fit for. We talked about that. There's actually, Dr. Natasha has actually written an entire book on GAPS and vegetarianism. It's very interesting information in that book. And if anybody would like me to share that book with them, just let me know and we can have a chat about that. So when we first explore the GAPS diet, it may appear to be a ton of work. However, there is a wholesome and healthy diet that will allow you a strong foundation, to build a strong foundation for good health for the rest of your life. It may be important for some of you to know that many people do not eat strictly GAPS forever, okay? This is sometimes just, you take what you need from it. And I use a lot of GAPS principles. If someone wants to help with their gut, but they're not sure they can do the full GAPS, we can work with that. We can start bringing in certain things and eventually work you onto a GAPS diet. Some people it takes a lot longer to actually get through things. Other people jump right in and they have no problems. Again, this protocol is no more difficult than just any normal cooking and feeding the family once you get into it and once you really understand what you're doing. Shopping is very simple. You just buy everything fresh and unprocessed. You visit the Light Cellar mostly daily, right, Denise, to make sure that you're getting plenty of ferments. And then, it's not as hard as it may sound when you first look at this. If you're interested in learning more about what I do and how I support people with their gut issues and GAPS protocol, I'd be very happy to offer everybody a free consultation if you're interested. I do have a special incentive for those who might be interested in learning more about GAPS and working with me to start improving their own microbiome. So come and visit noshoesnutrition.com. And I have blogs, I have a Facebook page, I have Instagram. You can find lots of more information there. And I would just like to say thank you to Malcolm and Denise and everyone for coming out today and for this amazing fermentation festival and for the Light Cellar. I just love you guys, I do. And I look forward to seeing everyone all week at the rest of the talks. So thank you so much.
Well, hopefully we can take some questions here. Let's see. Does it look like you can hear me here? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. Hey, Megan Barefoot. Okay, so here's one question coming through. This is from Ken Fornatero, and he's asking if there's a difference between the soluble versus insoluble fiber.
Yes, that's an excellent question. Excellent question. I personally find soluble, anybody with gut issues, I personally find the soluble fiber, that's the fiber that's a lot more gelatinous and easier. It's much easier to go through the digestive system. Anybody with really big gut issues, that's the first fiber I'll try them on. Things like psyllium, husks, and the really insoluble fiber, the kind of feels like cardboard in your, it doesn't break down, right? It goes right through you. That is like nails on a chalkboard, like scratching through your gut, and it can be very inflammatory for anyone with gut issues. So as you begin your journey, when you're adding fibers, soluble fiber is my choice for sure. Good question, Ken. Thank you.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I've got a question. I do have a question for you here. You were talking about like the healing crisis you could have when you start taking probiotics, and that you can actually like poo your pants on the way home from work if you're not careful, right?
So it's
And,
funny that you say that, but I have had a client who I introduced to ferments for the first time in her whole entire life. And I told her, go slow, just have a small amount of kombucha and I'll start with that. And then we'll add sauerkraut. And she discovered that she loved fermented foods. And she very nearly didn't make it home from work one day. And she was so mad at me. And I was like, well, what did you have? And she's like, well, a liter of kombucha. And I had like a big bowl of sauerkraut and all of these things. I'm like, ah, like she was really mad at me. But yeah, and the other part of it is that, you know, if you have a really poor microbiome, then honestly, you're going to have some die off. So having too much too fast can actually make you feel worse rather than better for a little while. So you want to go slow. Yeah.
it reminds me as a herbalist, like one of the things you do if someone's feeling sick is you give them a laxative, like, yeah, and they'll come back because something happened that made them feel better. They'll come back.
It's amazing how many people, once you get the bowels moving, there's no more headaches, there's no more achiness, there's like everything just works smoother in the whole body when everything's being processed through.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got another question here coming through from Ben. Ben is asking, how is alcohol incorporated or not incorporated in the GAPS protocol?
Unfortunately, Ben, it is not incorporated in the GAPS protocol. It is not something that you really want to concentrate on. It is something that's going to be very inflammatory for the gut. Alcohol also has a big problem, you know, if your liver is stagnant and burdened while we're changing up that microbiome, it's not going to do anything good to support your body. So we leave that out for sure.
Okay. So here's another we have some great questions coming in. Yeah, we might debate that comment on Friday night there.
Well, didn't Melinda just say that she's gonna change the everything that was said last week?
We might debate that when we talk about certain living beverages, but
so my husband would like to agree with you guys as well. He would like to he's going to be there for the living beverages so that he can work in the alcoholic beverages in a healthy way. We call it righteousness. Get the righteous foods in.
So here's another good question there's a question about kombucha. So here it goes. I've heard that kombucha functions more like a bacterial gut rinse, rather than function probiotically, such as yogurt or water kefir, and thus is not as healthy as a probiotic as people claim. Do you have any comments?
So I've never heard it used as a bacterial gut rinse. It is a ferment, so it does have bacteria in it. So it would be adding to the microbiome of your gut. Now, we have to be really careful with kombucha, especially commercial kombucha. It is popular, and therefore they've made it sweet, just like pop. So I really recommend that you make your own kombucha, or you buy some of the kombucha that's in the fermented beverages that are lower in sugar. And I recommend less than 5 grams of sugar per serving, because you're really doing yourself no good if you're just drinking. Like I literally, friend of mine gave me some kombucha said she didn't like, and it was like in these little cans that was like syrup. It was so sweet. And I actually used a quarter of these little cans to sweeten my entire jug of my own kombucha. So be really careful. So some of the commercial kombucha is just pop in disguise. So be careful with that. Same with yogurts and things like that. Watch the sugar content of these fermented foods, right?
Oh, well, this has been so amazing, Megan Barefoot, to have you here presenting for us. I remember when I first held that gut and psychology syndrome book, the first time I had it held it in my hands and started reading it, I was like standing up and shouting.
Have you read
in
the second one?
Because it's so important.
Have you read the second one yet?
No, not yet. Well, we got it here. I'm excited about that.
Blown.
Yeah, we're gonna make sure we send everyone. We got Megan Barefoot's website here, and it's really cool, and her Instagram, and we're gonna share with you some of these resources from Dr. Natasha Campbell-McBride. Her website is also amazing, so we're gonna send out those to you in the follow-up email from today's presentation. But it looks like we're gonna introduce our